All right, so we should be live right now. And as always, I'm going to be testing real quick on my app. It's not the most professional way to
Hey,
do it, quite
whatever.
frankly. But before we get going, obviously, I want to introduce for some of you that know Coach Joe Villegas from Paragon Performance. He agreed to come into my basement filled of toys, and
Yes.
I see you got a nice T-shirt on. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It's quite the man cave down
Yeah,
here. I have to
exactly.
say, it is pretty impressive.
I try. So I'm just going to sit here for 1 second, just
Yeah,
make
yeah,
sure
for sure.
there's no echo or anything on the live. Let's see here. Handy dandy. Make sure. All right.
Nice.
I think we're working. We got it.
Sweet.
Nice. All right. Okay.
All
right. Let's get going. So thanks for coming on for
yeah,
sure. It's
thanks for having me. It's awesome.
super appreciated. I'm gonna leave this out for a minute. And this is something I don't know for everybody that is here as a student or is not a student of the school. Coach Joe has been working with us now since June, July, basically, right? I think we started that first
June. Yeah,
6-week challenge back in June, July. And I'm going to let him kind of give you his background and stuff like that. But Coach Joe is a strength coach. He's also certified in precision nutrition's professional program, among lifter of very heavy things as well. And so I'm gonna let him talk a little bit more about that. But I thought it'd be an awesome time to bring him in. I know it's that new year, new you resolution
Right.
where a lot of people are like, all right, I'm going to change things once and for all. And then by like February 1st, it's back to the same stuff. So some of you may have seen a post that I sent out, like a week ago or so with myself, Coach Wojtek and Coach Turtle, where, as you can see in the previous, our previous selves, we were about 200 pounds collectively heavier. And, we all lost a lot of weight. Like I think on average about 65 pounds we each lost, and we've kept it off for 5+ years. And so, we're going to dive into that a lot more as we roll out our programming, the GB360 program and everything else. But, the big takeaway from that is, it really has to be a lifestyle change, in my opinion. And Coach,
totally.
you can talk about that a little bit more as well. It's hard. The discipline is hard to get there, but as long as you find something you actually love and enjoy doing, I think you're going to stick with it a little bit longer. So before we get into that, Coach Joe, welcome.
Oh, thank you.
So again, thanks for coming in today. And so, yeah, I want to hear a little bit of your background as well, in terms of, personally how you got into becoming a strength coach and getting into nutrition and everything else. And then we're going to talk about your experiences for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you for having me on, Mike. This is awesome. Such a cool setup here. So pumped. This is really, really cool. So a little bit of background. I grew up playing, Little League and stuff like that, but wasn't like a big sports kid. And I actually was in like marching band and stuff. So it was kind of funny. I wasn't like always in the weight room.
Yeah.
And then when I got out of college, I was looking into joining the Navy. And I wanted to get ready for the fitness tests and all that. So I joined a CrossFit gym in Princeton and just sort of fell into coaching. So they had a coach there that they ended up letting go. And the owner was like, hey, he's like, everyone seems to like you here and you're here all the time. I can't get rid of you.
Yeah.
Could I sponsor your certification and you could work for me, work it back? And I jumped right on it. I said, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was August of 2012. So it's been about 7 years I've been there coaching now. And from there, it just sort of like to snowball. So it was,
what made you though fall in love with the CrossFit stuff?
I liked it. It was like a challenge. It was hard. The community was really fun. So I was kind of just getting to hang out with my friends every day and lift weights and try new things. And it was something where, it was right when CrossFit was starting to sort of like blow up a little bit, like the, 2010 area. And I was like really pumped to try it. Like I just wanted to get out there and get my hands dirty, probably similar to like jujitsu with a lot of you guys, right? You just want to get on the mats and like get after it. So I finally had a chance to get in there and got like real into it. And I think a lot of that's reflected in my personality too. Like when I get into something, like I really, really get into it and kind of like just hit it head on. And so I just sort of just loved it, stuck with it. And, you know, you kind of build that community, and it's hard to pull away from it after a while, you know, for sure.
It is. So you started getting into the coaching in 2012, and what started to happen for you at that point in time? Was it mostly doing group classes, doing any one-on-one stuff?
Yeah,
or?
It was all group class for a while. So I'd have like the one-off client who would say, hey, can we work on snatching together? Can we work on pull-ups or whatever? But it was very like intermittent. And then probably around like 2015 or 2014 or so, I had moved into like doing more Olympic weightlifting, kind of like I would coach CrossFit, but I would do Olympic weightlifting and compete and that kind of stuff. And for those of you who are familiar, it's very weight class driven, similar to jiu-jitsu or wrestling, that kind of thing. So in order to drop weight for competition, I wanted to get my nutrition in line because the weights were there. Like I was lifting pretty well and that was cool, but it was like, I can't be walking around with an extra 10 pounds on me like the day before, you know, trying to cut water for that. So I started working with a coach just to learn and get the experience. And then once I did that for a while, probably like 9 months to a year, I was starting to kind of get my head around like, all right, I kind of got this. I could do it on my own, at least with this approach. And then I had people asking me like, hey, how did you do that? Like, how did you, lose that much weight or whatever, and increase your strength at the same time?
Yeah, I was going to say, just, I think a lot of people might look at or have experienced like, okay, I can lose weight, but then they start to also lose a little bit of strength too, because maybe they're not doing it, they're not necessarily doing it the right way, right?
Yeah. So we it's funny. So when you actually take it a little bit slower and do it the right way,
right,
I think pretty much everybody I've worked with who is a strength athlete, right? And that doesn't mean you compete. You could just do CrossFit on the week, on the weekends, whatever. But when they do it the right way, I've almost always seen an increase in their strength or their performance along with the weight loss. Now it's not huge gains. They're not like putting 50-pound PRs in their lifts or anything like that, but the performance is still increasing even though their body weight's coming down. So, when done the right way, you definitely can kind of have the best of both worlds, at least for a little while.
Yeah. And so, so you're a precision. Now there's different levels. I think you're a pro, or how? Explain to me
so they have like a level 1, level 2.
Yeah.
So I did their level 2. So that's kind of as far as they've got for that. And that program is pretty rigorous. It's a year. Like you're locked in for a year. And it's like daily, like every day you have stuff you have to do for 365 days. So it's pretty intense.
I tell people now who aren't familiar with precision, because I've been in the health and wellness industry for a pretty long time as well. And I've always heard of precision nutrition, and really the top guys and gals that I know in the industry that are trainers. John Berardi is very, very highly esteemed, colleague of everyone. And that program to me is, and I tell them, like, it's just a solid program. There's, and whether you call it the gold standard or not, there's other programs out there. I know that, but this is just, it's solid stuff. So anytime, that's how I actually found you originally, which is pretty cool. I went looking for a precision nutrition professional and found you, and then, oh, by the way, you happen to do a little jiu-jitsu as well.
That was like the most well-timed call, I think.
You're on a plane or something. You're getting ready for a flight, but funny. So you started doing this stuff in 2015 with the nutrition, and you saw that, and so been doing that ever since. And now you started taking on one-on-one clients, doing some remote stuff as well.
So 2015 started picking up with like friends of friends, that kind of thing. And I was just like, I'll do this for free. Like, I just want to get reps, just work with people and try it out. And then it just sort of snowballed from there, from there, to the point where people were referring people to me. So I was starting to get like, hey, can you work with my husband? Can you work with that person? And then at one point I was like, I'm going to like make this a legit thing. Like, I'll make it like a company and run it for real and do it for real. So this year actually got the LLC formed and did that. I hired Daisy, who's my coach as well, who I met through CrossFit. She's been killing it. She's precision nutrition certified as well. And we just kind of keep growing it from there. So it's pretty like crazy how it, starts to blow up and all that.
So let's talk about, because, as I was just kind of alluding to before, obviously we're hitting the new year, and it's like, the herds are going to start coming into the gym, and a lot of, and it's funny. I just saw a statistic the other day that said, I think it was like 48% of all Americans, of all adult Americans, tried to lose weight last year, right? Like the number is half, right? Half of all Americans are trying to lose weight,
Totally.
And so, I know a lot of them, they go to okay, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to do this stuff. And then by February, March, they've fallen off, and they're back to kind of their old habits.
Right.
What has been your experience? I mean, obviously working with people one-on-one, and probably seeing some of those rushes. I'm sure even with the CrossFit gyms, you guys get a rush of people coming and signing up in January. And what have you found have been some of the factors that people are either gonna fall off, or like you can tell, like, hey, this person I think is gonna stick around, or they think they're gonna stick to it?
Yeah, definitely. I would say, like, there's a lot of things going on in that question. So
I'm
kind of
sure.
like break it down, right?
Very loaded question.
Yeah, no, for sure.
We got time though, so you're good.
No doubt. So I would say maybe we'll focus first on where people falter, and then we get into what will drive them to be successful, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of, I think the biggest thing that people don't do is make like a commitment to the thing they want to achieve, right? Is they say, I want to lose weight. Okay, great. But like, that's sort of where it starts and ends. Like, there's nothing that's really written down. Like, okay, do you want to lose 10 pounds? Do you want to lose 20 pounds? Do you want to lose 20 pounds of muscle? Like, what, like, you got to define it a little bit better, in my opinion, anyway. And then from there, make a true commitment to do that thing, right? And I think that dovetails with the fact that a lot of people do too much to try and get to that thing all at once, right? So you probably have people say, okay, January 1st, dude, I'm doing it. I'm going to hit the weights. I'm going to eat 1 almond a day, and I'm going to drink, 2 gallons of water, and like do all this stuff.
Right.
But like, it's all too much too fast.
Yeah.
Right. Where you're, however old you are, it's taken you that long to get to that point.
Right.
To try and reverse it in 24 hours is pretty ridiculous. So where I tell a lot of people to start is like, just pick one thing, right? So, okay, you want to lose weight. That's fine. Maybe it is, I'm going to go do jujitsu 3 times a week. That's it. I'm going to eat the same way I eat. I'm going to drink the same amount of water I drink, and all these different things, but I'm going to do that one thing really, really, really well. And I'm not going to miss a single class for a month.
Yeah.
If I can do that, okay, then I'll layer in the next piece.
Yeah.
And then so on.
It's like there's so many variables you can choose that affect, right? That affect your weight loss or strength gain or muscle gain or whatever. And it's so funny. It kind of just reminds me, there's continuity there. At least there's similarities in business or in anything. It's like, just get good at one thing. Just focus on one thing. It's like funny with, in business, there's this book I love called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And like, discipline number 1 is pick one really, really important goal, like one thing that you're going to focus on, and then just do that, and then obviously it breaks down into certain things, but it makes so much sense in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of how we start with our clients, right? Is we kind of pick like one thing, and might pick one thing from each area of like their lifestyle. It might be like training, nutrition, sleep, but we typically start with sleep, which is like the funniest thing. They're all like, we're talking about our sleep. I thought I was signing up to work on food. And it's like, yeah, but if we get your sleep right, then everything else can start to layer in from there. And guess what? I know you're going to go to bed every night. So let's get that thing right. You're going to have more energy. You're going to feel better. Your body's going to react better to the food you're eating. Let's get that thing squared away, and then we'll start to work on your food.
Yeah, sleep is like how important. And I think it's one of those things that it's maybe in the past 5-10 years, even professionals have really locked into just recovery and what it does to your body. I mean, there's been so many, and there was one like TED Talk that I saw this guy talked about. About what sleep does, or just the lack of sleep, and how it completely like kills you at the end of the day.
Crazy. Was that the Matthew Walker one?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. He's fantastic. He's like really brought it to the forefront.
He has.
It's wild.
And like, I'll tell you, like, I don't know what it is or why now for myself. I mean, I know how important sleep is, but I prioritize sleep over so many more things these days. I don't know if it's just because I'm getting old or because whatever.
Definitely not that. Yeah. No
but
way.
Dana and I, like, we're like, if it's not like a work night where I'm at the school till 10:30 or whatever it is, our goal is to get into bed by like 9 o'clock. And if
Wow.
if I really have my way, I'm getting in bed by like 8:30, 8 o'clock. Yeah.
Wow. What time are you getting up every day?
Yeah, we're getting up at 6:30. So
That's fantastic.
yeah.
That's like a ton of sleep.
Yeah,
That's
like
awesome.
yeah. I mean, I don't know what it comes out to. Like maybe by the time we fall asleep, we get it like at least a solid 8 hours, but
It's great.
it's like, and because I know and I feel if I don't get a lot of sleep, I feel like total garbage.
Yeah. It's like you get like a hangover.
Yeah.
It's
exactly.
terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
It's true. I don't think people realize how important sleep is.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think it's more of like you realize it once it's not there. So if you're sleeping like crap right now, right, you're like, oh, whatever, not a big deal. But start sleeping really well for a little while and then have one night where it's not good and you're like, holy crap, I just do not feel good.
Yeah.
So it's so critical to do it. I'm trying to remember like the specifics of the study, but they were studying it was college students and they kind of sleep deprived them a bit. I think might have even been less than 48 hours, like maybe 1 or 2 nights worth of sleep. They only gave them a few hours and they started showing signs of being pre-diabetic like that fast. Then they gave them 1 or 2 nights of really good sleep and it all reversed. So it was like, it's so critical, especially if losing weight is your goal.
Yeah.
If you're sleeping like crap, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah. So sleep, the amount of sleep is definitely helps with weight loss.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And so there's actually a really great study. It's been ongoing by the National Weight Control Registry. And so they've studied, I think, tens of thousands of people at this point, losing anywhere from 30 to like 300 pounds. And they study, okay, what did they do? How did they do it? How long have they kept the weight off? Like any aspect you could think of. And so they've boiled it down to the top 3 trends of why they're successful and the top 3 trends of why they fail. And since we're kind of on the failure thing right now, one of the big ones is like you're tired. Like when you're tired, you do not care. You're like, I just want to eat something, or you're bored or whatever. I'm just going to grab the nearest thing or stop at Wendy's and get whatever. So if you're tired and you haven't been sleeping well, you're more likely to fall off your diet or be unsuccessful. So it's a critical piece to your success.
So first things first, as you mentioned, is, pick one thing, one variable, just work on that.
Definitely.
What typically happens after that, or what's kind of been, so you're saying is like, obviously some people just try to do too much too quickly.
Yeah, for sure.
And so one of the first things is just like looking at, if it's sleep or whatever else, what's typically some of the other major themes. Oh, someone's calling me. Not right now, guys.
No worries. So some of the major things. So like I said, we kind of break it into 3 chunks. We have like your sleep, your nutrition, and your training. And like as coaches through our program, we have a list of sort of basic habits that we want to focus on.
Yeah.
And that word's very important, right? Habits. It's not like, hey, you have to eat like this, or you have to eat certain foods and not that, or whatever. It's more of how do we get to shape your behaviors so they're congruent with your goal, right? So we might focus on sleep for a little while, make sure that's cool, and then we'll start to work on your food. So we might do something like, hey, and this is all stuff that is agreed upon between us and the person we work with. Because like you said earlier, you actually summed it up very nicely in the opening, is if it's something you love to do, you're more likely to do it, right? So if I give you a bunch of stuff to do and at the first day you're like, oh, this is cool, and by the end of the week you're like, well, I just feel like Joe's barking orders at me, I don't really want to do this anymore, you're not going to do it. So we try to get some habits together that you and I both know are going to work for
buy
you.
in there for sure.
Totally. And it might be something where, hey, you're going to eat protein at every meal. I want to make sure you've got a protein there at every meal, or veggies at every meal, or you're going to eat a little slower, or you're going to stop before you're full, whatever the case may be. We'll pick one of those and then do that as best we can for the next probably 3 weeks to 4 weeks and really, really hammer it. And if you think about it, like, hey, if I just eat slower, I'm going to feel fuller sooner and I'm more likely to eat less. Well, if I do that really well for a month, am I going to lose weight? Yeah, probably. So it's a little bit simpler than everybody makes it out to be.
Yeah.
You can still eat like all the things you eat, just don't crush the food so fast.
Yeah.
Like I know during a commercial break, you could probably kill a sleeve of Ritz crackers, like no problem. Yeah. But if you slow it down, you would realize, oh yeah, I'm halfway through this thing. Yeah. I should probably like call it quits, Yeah.
That was tough for me growing up as a kid.
Yeah.
When we'd have family dinners at night during the week, it was, there's 3 boys. I was youngest of 3 boys. It's something mom would put some plate on the thing, and it was kind of survival of, it's like you got to get in there before it would go, and you better eat quickly. If you wanted seconds, you better eat really quickly.
Yeah, no doubt.
So maybe not all of us necessarily probably were set up to think that, but it's so like Dana doesn't like when I eat with her sometimes, or if we share something, because I will eat it so quickly, Now I also go to the school 5, 6, 7 days a week. So I don't necessarily, the weight doesn't necessarily add up on me,
Right,
but
right.
so
You're also probably ravenous from like being on your feet and moving around.
exactly.
Like you want to get that in. So
Exactly.
for sure.
Cool. So obviously just in terms of some of that, from the nutrition standpoint, and then, what are some of the other things that you see, obviously, that, make or break, so to speak, somebody sticking
Yeah,
around?
for sure. So part of it, so what you mentioned earlier, is doing something that you're like interested in or you love or whatever. I think a big part of that, and people we see that are successful, is doing a couple things. And it's funny because it reflects exactly what that study I mentioned earlier shows in terms of being successful. So the number one trend is tracking. Like if you're tracking your stuff, right, it's very top of mind, it's right there, you're more likely to be compliant with what you're doing. And just think of it like if you're looking at your bank account every day, like where your money's going, what you spent, you went to Chipotle and spent $20
Right.
and like, oh, I should have saved it or whatever. Like, where it's going. So that's a big one. And number two is like meal prep. Huge. Like people who plan in advance are more likely to eat the food they've made, which is probably a healthier choice.
Right.
So on. And then the number three thing is they get somebody to help them. They get a coach or like an accountability buddy or something like that. And it doesn't be me, it could be anyone, but even friends I've seen like, hey, I joined Weight Watchers or I joined whatever. They have some third party that helps them feel accountable. And in that way, they're more likely to stay on track.
How much do you feel like at the end of the day, the motivation obviously still has to come from them, but like having that like adding that accountability, I agree, is like a really big part of it. But
for sure.
But like, I also feel like, hey man, we're not here to like just completely like keep kicking you in the ass.
Yeah.
It helps, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, do you feel like, are there some people that just, okay, they hire you or do whatever, but you're finding that you're having to really push them to do you
stay on track?
Yeah. Do you get that sometimes?
Yeah. I mean, I can't make everybody follow the program. Right. Like if I could, that'd be awesome. I could like help everybody in the whole wide world. Right. But I would say like a large part of it, as my job as a coach, I'm sure you feel this responsibility as well, right? It's like you can't make everybody show up to the school every day.
Right.
But you want them to. And like the fact that your intention is you want that for them, you want to do what's best for that person. But at the end of the day, like they have to put in the work and they have to want to be there. They have to want to show up and do all that stuff. So it's tough. There's definitely like some days where I'm like, man, I just want to get through to this person. Like, how do I connect with them to that level and like really pull them through? And sometimes I can do it and sometimes I can't. And if it's something where like if I need to refer them out to somebody or whatever, I just do it because that's what's best for that person.
Yeah.
But I do think having some sort of accountability is huge. And it's kind of like the bumpers in the bowling alley. Like you're going down the lane and you might drift, but they can help keep you in bounds, So I think it's huge to have that there.
How much do you think psychology has a play in this?
I think it's tremendous. I think it's probably like the fundamental piece to all of it, right? Like if you're the one who's controlling what your body's doing, like if your brain's not on board, your body is not just, scarfing cheeseburgers on its own, So I think the mental factor is huge. And you're really kind of unraveling and like undoing a lot of habits that are probably deep seated in your brain that have been there for who knows how long. And
Precision has some, they have some stuff around that, right? In terms of what you guys learn in terms of behavior change and some.
Totally.
I got to say, like, knowing what I know now about being in the health and wellness industry for 15 years, I would have gotten a psychology degree.
Yeah. At that
like
point,
I totally would have gotten, like, I would have gone undergrad psychology or something. Because it could be so useful in what we do. Like, it's unbelievable. And it's just something that I personally want to dive more and more into, just because I can see like how much at the core of all of this is like, it's super important.
I think a lot of it too, right, is like not just from a nutrition or a training perspective, is like just a human perspective, right? Like your business, like your livelihood is based on dealing with people and like working with people. So the better you understand them,
absolutely,
the better you can service them and help them and provide, right? Like
absolutely.
Same thing for what I'm doing, or even, just being around people in general, like relationships and all that stuff, I think is critical. So like you're saying, like I've been reading more about psychology myself and learning more, and it's like every little bit I'm like, that makes total sense, or like that's why that happens, or whatever. It's I definitely have to put a minor at least or something, just taking some more classes in it.
It's why, I mean, the more I see it, it's like, it's if they're not like if they're not connected with themselves and understand who they are and what their things that they got to work on, and like you said, some of these like deep-seated issues,
Totally.
It makes our job really, really hard. And so it's like, one of the things I putting into that GB360 is also trying to have a mental health coach there. And now there's a fine line between having somebody there for therapy versus just there from a professional, licensed clinical professional, providing self-care tips and other things, and referrals, I guess, if she senses or they ask for help, or looking for help. Because it's like, if you're, again, everything with nutrition, exercise, whether it's jiu-jitsu, anything health and wellness, right? At the end of the day, I think most people are looking to be their best selves, physically, emotionally, and everything else. And they're so tied together. They are inseparable, in my opinion. At the end of the day, you need all those things have to be like at a healthy level in order for them all to kind of work and stuff like that. So it's like, that's just some of the stuff that I'm, kind of noticing as we go through this as well. It's like, geez, like, I need a psychology degree right now. It'd be really helpful.
For
it would, just because I want to help the people, and there's things that are just outside of my scope,
Definitely.
But having a professional there that who is within scope is great.
Right.
So you can refer or do whatever.
Exactly. So. And they're able to get to the point faster than you would be, right?
Yeah,
like,
of course.
After just reading some books, whatever. So it's almost like you're bringing in the muscle to help them get to the conclusion that they need. You know? And I think at least from a lot of what I see, is like, I am not there to like necessarily tell you exactly what you have to do. It's more like, I need to help you get to the conclusion of what you think is best for you. And help you get on board with that. And then I'll help you guide you through that thing. But until we get through that little piece, like sort of the undoing of the old habits, or even recognizing them in the first place, or like what's causing them, we really can't get very far down the road. So it is like, it's a lot of psychology. It's also like, it's a lot of like negotiation almost, like there's a really cool book I'm reading now called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And he's a retired FBI negotiator. And like, I'm just reading it because it's like, it's interesting and there's a lot to learn in it. But a lot of the stuff he talks about and how to talk to people and how to get them to open up, it's like, oh, I've been saying things similar to that, and that's really worked for me. And now I kind of know like where that's coming from
I would love to read that.
Oh, it's awesome.
One of my biggest issues is I'm like a people pleaser. Like I like to be nice and so sometimes I have trouble knowing when, like with some of our students, when to kick them in the ass.
Sure.
And it's funny when I have done it, and sometimes, or when I've been a little bit more direct with them, but in a nurturing way, they really appreciate it. But like, I feel almost bad, like not coming down on them, but just like trying to like be a little bit more firm with them, I guess is the word that I'm thinking of. Like, and so I would love to be able to better myself in that way, and just kind of know when is like the right time sometimes to like push a little bit harder, or give them a little kick in the butt, or be a little bit firmer with them, because I know it'll help them, but I also don't want to come off as being too pushy, I guess. Sometimes.
Like drill instructor kind of.
And I don't want them to think like I want to get them into the school because I know they enjoy it, but I also don't want to come off as being, I don't know, like too overbearing. So just something in my own head.
We talk about that like at CrossFit a lot, right? Where it's like, because and sort of the way we get people in the school, like, and it's sort of set up similar to you, right? It's like we have this great community, but we just got to bridge the gap from the new person into that group and like get them assimilated. So a lot of like we talk about is like sort of building that emotional bank account with them. It's just making like, you're nice and all that, and like making deposits into the account, like, hey, this is great, you're moving really well, whatever. And then eventually gets to a point where like you can sort of like ease on the pleasantries a little bit and get a little more real with them. There's like a dude now who's been coming to the gym for probably 2 years or so ish. And when he first came in, right, like great dude, he got bit by the bug and started training a ton. Then he asked me to start coaching him like one-on-one because he wanted to get better. And him and I are at the point in our, coach to athlete relationship where I can walk up and be like, dude, what are you doing? I can just kind of get on him, and he doesn't take it the wrong way. He knows what I'm getting at, but we have that base of relationship there versus like, if I said that to someone on the street, they'd be like, what am I doing here? This sucks. Like these guys are mean or whatever.
Yeah. I usually tend around, like when people hit blue belt,
Yeah, by that
I can
point.
start telling them they suck.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. No, well, actually, it's funny. Like Coach Turtle's very like, he's very critical of me, but he knows that I appreciate it.
Yeah,
he knows how
yeah.
much my jujitsu sucks,
Right,
and he
well-
tells me, and I'm like, "You're right, man. I appreciate it. Like, teach me some more."
Yeah,
It's
you're
like,
not gonna go like crying, running out the door.
right,
You know,
exactly.
he knows
Yeah,
he can do that
right,
with
because
you.
we've built up that relationship already. Like he can
Exactly.
tell me those things, and I know he's got my best interests at heart.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And that relationship is there.
Yeah.
So, so on the flip side of all the stuff, like obviously you see just like things where people typically fail. What are some additional things that you've just seen in clients or people that come into the gym
Mm-hmm.
that are, they've been there for a long time, or just certain characteristics or patterns? Have you seen or picked up on certain patterns that typically told you, hey, this person, I think this person's going to be here for a long time?
Yeah, it's funny because there's some people who are like at the gym anyway, or complete surprises.
Yeah, we have that too.
And it's
Yeah,
like we ran a Groupon like years ago.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, we're just gonna get the people looking for a cheap workout or whatever. And like Daisy was a Groupon member.
Oh,
and it's
awesome.
like now she's one of my coaches. It's like the craziest thing. But yeah, I would say probably like the people who I noticed to be, we'll say like successful a little sooner are typically more like the type A people. Like they're a little more regimented in their general lifestyle. Not to say they're always doing the right things off the bat, but they're getting up early. They read a lot, or they have a job they're like a high performer at their job, right? So they're more likely to adopt things that are going to better them outside of work, because they kind of already do that anyway during the day. So Ethan, this dude I was just talking about, he came in the gym, the one who I don't have to be so pleasant with anymore. He came in the gym and he works as a professional accountant, and he's like pretty type A, super sweet dude. But his life is very like analytical. It's like very, regimented. So he gets up and he comes in the gym in the morning every day and he does his thing. And I just kind of give him the next steps to do, and he just sort of follows the pattern, and it works out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It's, and that, I'm just listening to you say that, and I'm thinking like, okay, how does that, or does it line up with some of the stuff we see at jiu-jitsu? Yeah. And it totally does. The people that I've seen that are, when I say most successful, they stick with it, and they're they've been here from the beginning, or just they're the ones that I know are going to end up getting their black belt, are the ones that have fallen into a good rhythm where they are coming at the same time pretty much every single week. They may only come twice a week,
right?
But they're going to be there.
Right,
they're going to be there Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 or whatever it is. Or we have we have a noon class that I teach. And I see the noon crew, like typically it's the same people over and over, they stay. And, for whatever, again, not necessarily knowing how they are off the mats. I do know some of them obviously, but they definitely, have just said, this is the time I've carved out, or it was just an easier, maybe that's why I like noon, because it's not family time at night or whatever.
Yeah.
But, they've carved out that time.
Right.
And that's for me, I think, and I don't know what your experience is like, where I see people fall off to is, they don't carve out the time.
Yeah.
They don't think that, Lisa's right there. She's saying noon class rocks.
Awesome.
It sure does. They just don't carve out the time, and they make every excuse in the world that why they can't. And they, it's family time, or whether they started and then all of a sudden they fall off. And this is kind of going back to what I was saying before, what I'm trying to get across to people these days is the importance of self-care.
Yes.
And so I think a lot of these people just don't, either they, in a good way, in a bad way, they put themselves last.
Yeah.
Right. And they say, I've got to do all this other stuff. I don't have time to do this. But what tends to happen is then they fall into these ruts, eating, physical activity, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I've been trying to work on explaining to them, like, it is like non-negotiable that I don't care if you come to jiu-jitsu, I don't care whatever it is, but you need to carve out that time for yourself, or else you're not going to survive.
Yeah, right.
And I don't mean to sound like that, but it's
reality though.
It is, right?
Because
from an emotional standpoint, psychological standpoint, from a physical standpoint, you need that self-care time. You need that, decompression time.
Totally.
Obviously jiu-jitsu, CrossFit, whatever, those are things, physical activity as well as community and all those things. So I'm trying to take these days as the approach. And I've been firm with a couple people and not knowing how they're going to be like, whether they're going to say like, screw you, I'm done, or like, oh, you're totally right. And like most of the time they've been like, you're so right, I'm going to make the time, whatever. And they do. But that's what I find typically what I've seen is, whether, and I know life gets in the way and I say that, but I think in many cases what I say to them is you got to have a difficult conversation with your significant other, or whoever it is, that for them to understand that you need time as well. And oh, by the way, you got to give them their time too.
Yeah, no, 100%.
It's a team approach, right? Where it's like, hey, you got to work out a scenario and a schedule where you're giving them their time to do that stuff, right? And then you're getting your time to be able to go do jiu-jitsu, go running, go to CrossFit, whatever it may be.
Yeah,
that's to me where I've seen at least like those patterns of certainly the people that get into those rhythms are the ones that are successful. The ones that are not, that typically do that. I'm trying to be a little bit more firm with them these days.
Yeah. I definitely think like that conversation with your spouse or partner, whoever, is critical. I think there's a conversation that should happen before that, though, with yourself, right? Like it's very easy for people to put the responsibility on other things like, oh, I can't work out because of my kids or because my job or my boss or whatever. It's like, or I can't eat healthy because like it's expensive. And it's like,
or I'm traveling all the time.
Yeah. It's like, hey, I travel all the time for like, I'm like on the road all the time. Like I still manage to get in my meals and do my thing. So I think a lot of it is like for lack of a better term, a lack of like self-responsibility. Like you're blaming everything but yourself.
Yeah.
And it's not to be negative on yourself, but like you have to look in the mirror and say, okay, like I didn't eat the way I was supposed to today because I chose not to.
Yeah.
Like there's never been a better time to find healthy food. You can go to a Wawa and get like hard-boiled eggs and cut up veggies and like all the healthy stuff you want. There's like jiu-jitsu schools all over the place. There's gyms all over the place. Like it's there. It's whether or not you're choosing to do it. So I think before you go to your spouse and say, hey, I need this, you need to understand with yourself, like, I'm going to do this. And then when my spouse gives me that time, I can't say, oh, I can't go because of my wife or my husband. It's like, well, they gave you that time. Now you're choosing not to go. You know what I'm saying?
It goes back to the psychology. We talk about like that we have this like kind of these 4 buckets of like self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, social management, in terms of like just leadership development and like being able to form healthy relationships with yourself and others.
Yeah.
Number 1 is self-awareness.
Yeah.
Right. It's like,
yeah.
Like, again, always making excuses, blaming others, blaming environments, blaming everything else, and not looking in.
Yeah.
And you need to be skilled and sometimes I think a professional to be able to have that conversation with that person to be like, look, this is what you like. You may not see it now. Like there needs to be tact, right, involved in that. And I try to have that on a very like superficial, topical level, being trying to get them to kind of see that, get to that self-awareness a little bit better. But you're totally right. Like it all starts from within, all of it. It totally does.
I would make that like, so this is something that I've been trying to do lately, like in the last few months, of like, if I'm driving in the car and I start like to blame something, whatever, I go, okay, like how was I responsible for that thing?
Right.
So like I had a work trip maybe 6 weeks ago like 5 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, something like that. And I got home and I was like stuffy, I was feeling sick. And I'm like, oh, I got a cold, like it's work trip, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, I'm the one that bought the ticket and I'm the one that got on the plane and I'm the one that sat there with 200 people who were, one of them could have been sick, like it's my fault for getting on the plane in the first place. Like it's not the plane's fault. It's not the airline's fault. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I totally agree. I do the same thing. It's like even over this break, we've had a couple students show up at the wrong times.
Right.
And instead of being like, oh, like they didn't read their email or whatever, I'm thinking, I'm like, what could I have done to ensure like 100% of my students like never came to the wrong time?
Yeah.
Should I have sent out another text? Should I have done something else?
Exactly.
Like if you put the onus on you 100%, you never have those issues. I've I've been doing that a lot too, man. It's been really helpful.
Yeah. And
That's awesome.
that's kind of a two-parter, right? Is like, one, it puts you back in control of things.
Yes.
You're not blaming other stuff. So it's
you
like,
control it.
I control it. So that's cool. The other thing is too, is if you explain that to that person, say, hey man, I'm sorry, I didn't get the schedule out to you. That's my bad. They're more likely to also take responsibility, where you're kind of setting them up to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
So I think that's huge. Like when I talk to nutrition clients, I'm like, oh, this weekend didn't go well. I went to a birthday party and I ate like half the cake or, whatever. I'm like, hey, you know what? That's my bad. I should have set you up with some, like a little 1, 2, 3 to follow to make sure you didn't do that. And typically they go, you know what, man, don't worry about it. You're right. I should just have done this way, that way. Like they'll self-reflect because you are also doing the same.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So a couple of things real quick.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get into some exercise stuff.
Sure.
There's, one of the things that I see a lot out in the industry is a lot of myths or a lot of just inaccurate things that people believe. There's always like a lot of these fad diets and things. And, we could probably talk about this for another 2 hours.
Yeah, right.
What are some of the biggest like inaccuracies that you see or you hear that people ask when you're working with a client or just stuff that you think more and more people should know, like, okay, this is not true?
Oh, for sure. I think probably the biggest, I kind of lump a lot of them into one category of like just extreme diets. And I don't mean like you eat nothing or it's not like that. It's more of like things you hear every day, like keto, intermittent fasting, all these different approaches are like, people will swear by them. Like, oh, it's the best thing. It's this, it's that. But it's kind of an extreme approach, right? To say, hey, I'm going to cut out an entire food group, or I'm not going to eat for a day at a time, or all these things. So in my opinion, I think it's a bit extreme, and I think it's unnecessary, right? I think the best diet is the one that you're going to do. It's like that simple. So like, if you want to do paleo and it's going to help you stick to a healthy lifestyle, then do paleo. Like if you want to do keto and that sounds good to you and it's congruent with your lifestyle, like go nuts. Like I have nothing wrong with those, like a plant-based diet per se, if you're doing it intelligently and it's going to make you healthier and you're going to stick to it. But for people to say things like the only way to do it is to do this or eat that way or cut this out, I think is very misleading. And like Game Changers just came out a little while ago. And everyone, like I've gotten so many questions like, hey, what's the deal with this? Should I switch to plant-based? Like I have clients who are like insisting on it. Yeah. And I would say, hey, look, like you could do that. You could switch. Totally fine. If it's something you believe you're going to stick to. Yes. But if you're not, like, then it's kind of like, is it worth the exercise to do that?
Those are the magic words you're saying. And I totally agree. It's like, if you're like, because I guess everybody looks at these things a lot of the times as these quick kind of solutions, when the things that I've seen that have worked long term is just true lifestyle change, which takes years, in my opinion. Years. Maybe a few months people start getting into that and get into those habits, but it's only the people that I've seen that have made long-term lifestyle changes, whatever the hell the diet was. Like I said, myself or Coach Turtle, Coach Wojtak. I know Coach Turtle went vegan a few years ago, but he had dropped a ton of weight before he even went vegan. But we had just made total lifestyle changes. Like I still eat whatever the hell I eat. It's not like I never went on any special diet. I just started, maybe drinking a little bit less beer or eating a little bit less crap. Like just in general. I just was I got more active, I was going to jiu-jitsu. I liked it, but it was like you said, just do the thing that you think you're going to stick with. Right. At the end of the day, that not this like 6-week thing or whatever. I mean,
no. And people know better. You know what I mean? Like if
but they don't.
But like if we were eating right now, right? And you had a plate full of junk and I point at it, you're going to do one of two things. You're going to be like really proud of how healthy your meal is, or you're going to be like making excuses like, well, I'm tired and don't judge me. You know what I mean? Like you're going to go one of two ways. So like people, I think like deep down, they know what a healthy meal looks like, what a healthy one doesn't look like.
Cognitive dissonance.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Right. So it's more of like you said, getting people to get on board with something that they like or they're interested in. They're more likely to stick with it, And at the very least, if you can like tip the first domino, like, hey, I started, like for me, I started doing paleo. That's kind of where I started this whole thing. And then it got into like counting macros. And then it got into more like scientific, like really time-based approach and getting real nitty gritty with everything. And it kind of evolved from there. And now I've sort of like taken steps back, and it's just more of like, okay, well, I had a cheeseburger last night, so I'll have a salad with some grilled chicken tonight. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not this big to do. You know what I mean? It's like I've slowly ingrained it in my lifestyle over years. Yeah. You know, it's not an overnight thing.
Yeah. I think that's like the biggest message I would love to get out to all the New Year's resolution folks out there is don't be looking for this quick fix. Don't be looking for these extreme diets. Find something that you enjoy to do. And that's why I keep saying that, because I think at the end of the day, that motivation has to be there. And I think part of what keeps long-term motivation is like engagement and fun.
Totally.
Especially with physical activity and community.
Yes.
You know, a lot of people that I know that may go to a gym and they may not necessarily like going to the gym or going to do that workout, but they like their instructor.
Yep.
Or they like their little crew that they go with, their little clique that they go with, and they go because because of the community aspect there. And that's great. I'm like, that's huge. That's fantastic. And that's huge. And so like what I've just experienced with all of that too is you have to, don't be looking for a place just with weight loss in mind, or weight loss in mind in general. Like forget about the weight loss. Just go find something that you enjoy doing, that you go try all different things, whatever it is, you know, find something and then something that might stick. Hopefully you like the people, maybe you like the instructor, maybe there's some attractive male or female there that you want to hang around
whatever it
with,
takes,
and, whatever it is in that sense that engages you long-term, or like satiates that, maybe it's a primal instinct, whatever it is, do that. And all that other stuff. Hopefully, you know, it's a good community, and hopefully you have all those other things, and you start getting into those habits.
Yeah.
Man, there's one I think at Peak that's like an adult, like sports league. Like I would love to,
cool.
It's like they've got like kickball and soccer and softball and stuff. I'm like, man, that's a great idea. We should all still be playing organized sports.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, so last topic I want to talk about is exercise programming. So, you know, I just remember from my days as a personal trainer, I got my CPT through NASM and stuff, and I was doing a lot of stuff, and just understanding some of the basics of exercise and strength training and everything else. What would be some of your general thoughts for a student of jiu-jitsu? And you know enough of jiu-jitsu in terms of like what energy systems it takes and what the benefits.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
What do you think is like a good general program that somebody should be working on? And like, let's say there's somebody that doesn't necessarily go to the gym that much, or not necessarily super experienced with it, but do you think they're just looking at like muscular endurance type of phase stuff, like high rep, or like medium type of 8 to 10 rep range? Like, what's kind of like your general thoughts? Big like compounding movements or whatever?
Right. Yeah, it's a good question. So I think I want to first look at where they're at in their jiu-jitsu journey, right? Are they competing? Are they somebody who's brand new? Are they, because if they're competing, right, they're kind of bound to a weight class. So that's one. But two is like, how much are they training jiu-jitsu? Like, are they there 6 days a week? Because I don't want to crush them in the gym and then have it be a detriment to their jiu-jitsu, right? But if, let's say it's like the average person maybe goes to jiu-jitsu 3 times a week or something like that, and they just want to get a little bit stronger or whatever, compound lifts for sure. So like mechanical work with muscle, like that's squats, your presses, any pulling, rows, anything to strengthen like your hamstrings and your back would be huge. I think people focus on the muscles they see in the mirror. They don't focus on the ones they don't see, and those tend to be the stronger ones. Like, so for those who don't know, like I compete in strongman, and I've seen a lot of really big, really strong people. And I've seen people who have really big chests that aren't that strong. I've seen people with pretty big legs that still aren't that strong, but I've never met anybody with like a big back that wasn't strong. Like, so getting your back, like think about even like,
and just for one thing though, too, in jiu-jitsu, a lot of it is, and I remember Professor Ricardo always said, like, a lot of it is pulling and grips. Like, you don't do as much pushing and pressing. There's a little bit, but majority is, a lot of it is that is that pulling and grips and tightness,
Yep.
and certainly glutes, right, for
Oh,
bridging and other
big
things.
time.
And yeah.
Even like what comes to mind is like a bow and arrow choke. Like
Oh,
you're,
yeah.
you know, you're
Yeah.
rowing that person
Yeah.
over your leg. Like if you haven't had a hamstring cramp doing that, I mean, are you even doing it right? So,
Right.
you know, so I would say that's super important. And then I like after the big compound lifts are out of the way,
Yeah.
I'd be doing grip work like left and right. That's a big one. Like for the little bit of jujitsu that I get into here and there after all the travel, it's like people have a hard time breaking my grips, but I'm used to like farmers carrying a couple 100 pounds in each hand and, you know, picking up like odd objects and stuff. So my grip is very strong.
So what do you do? Like, what would you recommend as some stuff just to work on grips?
Yeah. If you have like a rice bucket, you ever do that? So you like a
Oh, like
Home Depot
to
bucket.
do the
Yeah,
hand
you just do
movements?
that, but it's also
Yeah.
it's not just like crushing because there's three types of
Yeah, it's
grips.
out too, right?
Yeah, so you have pinching, crushing, and then extending.
Oh, gotcha.
So like if you have those old school like steel plates, you can put two flat together and pinch that and just try and like hold them as long as you can.
Nice.
Brutal.
Yeah.
The crushing in the rice bucket's great. You could do sand as well, but then extending, like going the other way, right? Like you wouldn't just work your biceps without working your triceps.
Right.
You want to do both.
Right.
So I would do the grip work for sure. But even like if you're doing pull-ups, like maybe you could even bring your gi to the gym and throw your gi over the bar and do pull-ups on your gi because you're grabbing the lapels all the time.
Right.
So stuff like that. But I would be doing like big compound lifts for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you can go anywhere probably from like I probably wouldn't have somebody doing anything below 5 reps. They don't need to be doing like 1 rep max deadlift or anything like that. There's no need to put them in a space where like they could potentially lead to injury, right? If they're moving well and they're getting strong, like you can get really strong doing 5 rep stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like I typically don't do 1 rep maxes. Like I might do it once a year for a given lift, maybe twice, but I get stronger, you know? So
Yeah.
I would stick in that 5 to like maybe 8 rep range because you kind of get the best of like, yeah, I'm getting stronger, man, I'm putting a little muscle on, and then go from there.
Yeah. So what about for people with, you know, backs and knees that are not necessarily, you know, give them a little bit of problems.
For sure. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're going to a conventional gym, you can use some of the machines and stuff like that. But I would even just lower the intensity on a lot of that stuff. Like if you can't air squat, like if your knees are that messed up, you don't want to back squat with weights, have them do air squats just to get that range of motion in for sure. I mean, I would imagine like if you can't get into an air squat in the gym, there are a lot of positions in jiu-jitsu that are going to be very uncomfortable for you. So I would try and get through those ranges of motion on your own. And then when you actually get on the mats with somebody, you're probably at the very least a little more confident in where you're putting your body. You know what I mean?
And let's talk a little bit about mobility work, right? Because
Sure.
that's something that I assume is, I don't know, like in terms of like pre-workouts and stuff, do you guys go through any type of just like mobility work or just part of the warm up or any recommendations or thoughts on things there?
Yeah, for sure. So we do like a CrossFit, a big like dynamic warm up.
Yeah.
Typically, where you're skipping, you're jogging, you're bear crawling, a lot of the stuff you do in a jiu-jitsu warm up just to get everything open and moving. Some of the mobility stuff, I think a good chunk of the mobility stuff, at least in the CrossFit space, is a little overhyped. You know, like I can make a couple adjustments to somebody's squat and fix it right there. I could change their breathing a little bit and it might put their hips in the right spot and they squat better versus like being on a foam roller for an hour and doing all this like weird stuff with bands. So I'd typically explore that first. But if they are restricted in some way, I think it's fantastic for opening up not only the spot that seems to be stuck, but allowing, like for me, here's a good example. My upper back gets really tight. So my hips and low back pay for it. So what I do is I make sure I spend some time opening up my upper back. Like just this morning, I went in the gym and I spent a good probably 5-10 minutes like opening all this up so that when I went to do like rows and squats and stuff, everything down here felt okay. So it's, as you know better than anybody being in the PT world, like everything's connected.
Yeah, of course.
So you want to make sure if you do have those like sticky spots, those trouble points, you're keeping an eye on that. And then everything downstream that might be getting interfered with as a result, for sure. So
just like in general, like when going to the gym to do some of these compound movements or whatever general exercise, you recommend a nice simple dynamic warm up type of some bear crawl, some whatever movement based, just kind of mobility drills, just to get the
some
nervous system
lunges.
going, get the blood flowing.
Exactly.
Doesn't need to be super complicated at all.
Nothing crazy. It would look like stuff you would do in gym class, like growing up, like real simple, like you're playing, like real simple, skip around, arm circles, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If you feel good, move on. If you don't feel good yet, keep moving. But I would say is like, then you can get on the barbell, move a little bit, add a little bit of weight. And again, listen to your body, right? Like there's days, and I was just having this conversation with somebody, there's days where I go in the gym and it might be like a big deadlift session on paper. And I get set up and I start working my way up the weights. And it's just like, it's not happening. It's not today, and that's fine. Cause there's going to be other days versus like just pushing it. And then there won't be other days because I'm injured or laid up on the couch, so
that's a lot. That's something that, like ripping a callus off this talk here. What I've seen just like in strength and conditioning, like the coaches, and so I got some buddies that, that work at pretty high levels. And they're really on top of their readiness on those days, right? Totally. They may even use like stuff like Omega Wave and some other things that are like, or they just have some other manual tests that they do, or a grip test or jump test. But like that's a big thing that I see, like just knowing and recognizing and feeling, and maybe doing it a little bit more scientifically now with some technology, just be like, how physically prepared is your body today to go hard or not, or maybe back off a little bit.
Right.
And of course, I'm sure, they track sleep and water and all that, right? No doubt. Goes back to sleep. Probably like if you had crap sleep, you're probably not going to be, chances are you're probably not going to be your best.
Exactly. For sure. I mean, that was, what was that Matthew Walker was talking about, where it's, if you have a night where you're getting, I think, less than 6 hours of sleep, you're already at 70% of what you would operate at if you had a full night's sleep. Like 30%. Can you imagine like if I went into work and said, hey boss, I'm going to do 70% of what I'm supposed to do today. They'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, you don't, that's not an option, So, or like you're in a role with somebody, you're like, I'm going to go 70%. Well, you go 100, like you'll be tapping in no time, So it's like, you might want to prioritize your sleep a little bit there.
Right. Exactly. Cool. Awesome stuff. I really appreciate you coming in today, and I'm sure we could literally talk for hours about all this stuff. But and for obviously people that don't know, Coach Joe is you have open office hours at each school once a month. We're starting that in January actually, so you guys can come in, meet with Coach Joe. Ask him any questions. He'll help you if you need to put together a little quick meal plan, or just you got some very specific questions on nutrition or water or sleep intake or anything else. If you want to start tracking some things too, we can start about that, as well as exercise programming. Like I train jiu-jitsu, but I still go to the gym. I still want to get some strength training, and I feel great when I do. It's like you got to have that good balance. So Joe is there for you guys for sure. And for any students or anyone that's like looking to come to jiu-jitsu, it's part of our whole program. We've got a nutrition expert, a exercise programming coach. We got a mental health coach. We're bringing on a physical therapist soon. I know somebody.
Yeah, right.
I got a guy, so to speak. Right. So just to do like screens and stuff like that, and ask questions. So like, cause man, at the end of the day, I think it's like all those things matter. Like all of those things play a big part of you trying to be your best self, right? Totally. Trying to be as good of a dad, husband, wife, sister, brother, student, whatever it may be. So again, I appreciate you coming on.
Dude,
man.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
Appreciate
it's get to hang out in my basement.
Yeah, super cool.
So Coach Joe's also always on our private Facebook group, guys. You can always reach out to him there if you have questions. If you want to know more, you want to get a little bit of extra TLC as well. Coach Joe does like more intense one-on-one tracking and coaching and stuff like that as well too. So lots of different services. So Joe, thanks again, man. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Whoever joined, we had a bunch of people on today, so thanks for coming in. You guys can always follow up with other questions as we go along, and I'll see you on the mats.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.